So, dear colleagues, may I ask you to take the seats, please? As you know, because of the extraordinary sitting to Ukraine, we are we are a bit restricted in time. So, but of course, first of all, dear colleagues, I would like to welcome you very warmly this morning. I hope you enjoyed your first day of this year's European Parliamentary Week, and I'm happy to open this very timely and relevant first plenary session on the topic fostering a business-friendly Europe in the context of the next Multiannual Financial Framework, prospects and challenges for the single market. So, of course, I welcome all representatives from the national parliaments. It's great to have you here, as well as the members of European Parliament. You represent citizens from the EU member states, candidate and observer countries. We have 238 participants from 27 EU national parliaments, 4 candidate countries and 1 special guest country that have registered for this year's EPW. A very warm welcome, an extremely warm welcome, of course, to the colleagues from the Cypriot presidency. And congratulations to the first weeks of your presidency already. And we are co-organizing this conference. I'm so pleased to co-chair this session with Mrs. Christiana Erokut. No, I tried before and it worked. Erotokritou. It was excellent the first time. Erotokritou, Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Financial and Budgetary Affairs of the House of Representatives of the Republic of Cyprus, and I would like to give you the floor immediately.
Thank you very much, dear Mrs. Barley, Vice President. Thank you, dear Katerina. Dear colleagues, it is a great pleasure and an honor to co-chair this first plenary session. I would like to thank Vice President Katerina Barley for our close cooperation, as well as all of you for being with us this morning. Today's discussion goes to the heart of Europe's economic future. The next MFF for the period 2028 to 2034 is being negotiated in a context of heightened geopolitical uncertainty and growing expectations for Europe, as well as a pressing need to deliver competitiveness, resilience, and strategic autonomy. At the same time, the single market remains the cornerstone of Europe's economic strength, cohesion and European integration. The reflections and proposals put forward in the Letta report underline that while the single market is Europe's strongest economic asset, it also requires renewed political commitment. Addressing fragmentation, improving regulatory coherence and unlocking investment, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises, are essential if Europe is to remain globally competitive while ensuring cohesion among member states. For Cyprus, this debate carries particular significance, as the Cyprus presidency of the Council of the European Union coincides with a decisive phase of the MFF negotiations. We stand ready to act as honest brokers, promoting balanced solutions that strengthen competitiveness, solidarity and convergence across the Union. I am therefore especially pleased that Mr. Letta will share his insights with us today, and I look forward to a substantive and forward-looking exchange. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I would like to join you in expressing the great honor to welcome Mr. Enrico Letta, former Prime Minister of Italy and President of the Jacques Delors Institute, whose landmark report, Much More Than a Market, has set out a compelling vision for the future of the European single market and has become a cornerstone of the current policy debate, alongside the Draghi report on competitiveness. His analysis laid bare the persistent fragmentation of the single market and called for bold action, a fifth freedom encompassing research, innovation, education and data, genuine financial market integration through a savings and investments union, and the removal of administrative and regulatory barriers that continue to hold back European businesses and citizens. Another important aspect that sometimes enjoys less attention is the interlinkage he sees between a strong social dimension, like workers' rights and social protection, with prosperity, growth, and competitiveness. Now I lost my... I got confused. I'm sorry. Enrico Letta's recommendations, together with those of the Draghi report, have directly shaped the Commission's proposal. Something's wrong today. For the 2028 to 2034 Multiannual Financial Framework, which introduces a major shift towards competitiveness through the creation of a European Competitiveness Fund, a new single market and customs program, and the consolidation of shared management programs under national and regional partnership plans. The question before us today is whether these instruments taken together can deliver the deeper, stronger single market that Enrico Letta argues is essential for Europe's economic future, and what role national parliaments and the European Parliament must play in ensuring democratic oversight of this transformation. So I would like to give the floor now to President Enrico Letta.
Thank you very much, Vice President Barley. Thank you very much, President Erotokritou. Dear friends, colleagues, I'm really very honored and happy to be here this morning. I feel a strong European pride today. 4 years later, the Ukrainians are still resisting. 4 years later, Putin's war is still killing people, and 4 years later, Europe is still helping in coherence with our values Ukraine. And I think we have to be proud of all these choices, and we have to continue in this line. I thank you very much for this introduction. I will try in this period of time to tell you two fundamental points. One point is about the diagnosis, and one point, the most important one, is about what to do. About diagnosis, I strongly advocated through the report, much more than a market, that the European Union today is facing a new problem, and the new problem is the awareness of the cost of fragmentation and the cost of non-integration. This cost of fragmentation and non-integration is for all of us something that is crucial, and we consider it as the most important problem. When we created the single market 35 years ago, the single market was created in a period of time in which the world was completely different. We didn't have the rise of China, India, and big powers, the giants that are today dominating world economy with the US, the BRICS, and others. The European countries at that time were all big enough to stay in the world competition in some fields alone. This is why fields like energy, connectivity, financial markets stayed fragmented. We decided at that time to keep alone and non-united the markets in these fields. The single market wasn't working for these fields: financial markets, energy, connectivity. In these fields, we are still 27. We are not one. Being 27 and not one in these fundamental fields, fundamental for competitiveness, is today part of our problem, part of our weakness. If you give a look to the consequences of this fragmentation is an enormous cost for all of us. This fragmentation in these fields, energy, connectivity, financial markets, is bringing jobs from Europe to the US, from Europe to China and the rest of the world. This fragmentation is bringing investments out of Europe. We calculate that 300 billion euros of European savings are flying to the US, strengthening the American economy, the same American companies that fly back to Europe to buy with our own savings, our own European companies. These kind of cost of non-integration, a cost of fragmentation, are becoming a crucial challenge for Europe. We can't continue like that. The decline of the European economy will accelerate in the next years if we continue fragmented in these fields where the integration is absolutely fundamental. Being competitive with 27 energy markets, 27 telecom and connectivity markets, 27 financial markets against the US, the Chinese, the BRICS, it's absolutely impossible. This is why the need for completing the single market today is an existential challenge for Europe. This is why I would like to take the opportunity of this great event, and I would like to thank you all, because the role of national parliaments, I think, is decisive to be successful in this fundamental existential challenge for Europe. I would like to share with you what I presented 10 days ago to the 27 leaders meeting in Aldenbiesen, Belgium Castle. In this meeting, this retreat, we were invited, myself and Mario Draghi, to try to address the leaders on some ideas on the future. This is why I presented, and I would like to share with you, a matrix. This matrix is the matrix that you can see here, is the matrix of what I think we should do in the next 3 years. The matrix is the matrix for the completion of the single market. What I propose is not to continue with the narrative of completion of the single market, for the very simple reason you are all members of national parliament, you are all experienced politicians, you know that completing something is not a very exciting political exercise. This is why I propose to the leaders to launch the project of One Market Act. The One Market Act, in my thoughts, should be the third and final phase of the European market integration. We had decades of the common market until 92. Then we had the single market in 92. What I propose today is to launch the project of One Market. So from common market to single market, from single market to one market, with the completion in these fundamental fields. The slogan I proposed, One Europe, One Market, can be the slogan of the next years, if we are able to use this matrix. This matrix is with 3 vertical points, the points that I mentioned before. On financial markets, the proposal, as Vice President Barley just mentioned, of the Savings and Investments Union, a new project to being able to integrate financial markets, definitely. On energy, the final completion of the single market through the energy union, that is fundamental to lower the costs of energy that are today big part of our weakness, and on connectivity, all the topics related to the telecom markets and the digital markets. I proposed 3 horizontal enablers that are, in my view, fundamental to make successful this work. The 3 fundamental enablers are the fifth freedom, so the work on innovation, research, skills. You know that the single market is well known as the market of the four freedoms, freedom of movement of goods, services, capitals and people. But we know very well that these four freedoms are speaking about the economy of the last century. We lack the intangible, and we know very well that the intangible today is large part of competitiveness. This is why I strongly believe that a big boost for a fifth freedom program, and I'm very happy because the Commission decided to give a mandate to a Commissioner Zarieva, working on the fifth freedom. I know the European Parliament, dear Vice President Barley, is working very hard on this topic. I consider it fundamental. The 28 regime is the idea to have a legal framework that can be a sort of passepartout, a sort of fast track for companies. The European Commission is starting working on startups, and the proposal will be out in the next weeks. The Commission will meet, we know, 18th of March on this topic, and probably in April the Commission will present a proposal on the 28th regime that is very well, I would say, received, and there are many expectations from the world of business. And the freedom to stay, that is the third enabler that I put in the report, freedom to stay, because I strongly believe that until now we stressed very much, and it was a success, the mobility part of the single market. But the mobility part of the single market is not everything. We know very well that today brain drain and asymmetric demographic situation in many European countries losing large part of their population because of the mobility, and the fact that today freedom to stay has to be a big part of our reflection. It is, of course, related to social and territorial cohesion. There's a strong link with the MFF discussion, and I would like, in the final minute of my presentation, to stress the link between all these ideas and the present discussion, because it is clear that what is necessary is to be very fast in being able not to postpone all this discussion to the next years, but to start immediately. This is why I strongly hope that the European Council meeting 19th of March on competitiveness can be able to give a big boost to all these topics. This is why I strongly hope that this Assembly, the national parliaments, and President Erotokritou, the Cypriot presidency of the Council of Ministers, can boost in the next weeks and can be able to support all these projects. I end up saying that is the only, in my view, effective reaction to the aggressions that we are having from the rest of the world, and first of all from the US. If we want to be competitive, if we want to be strong, if we want to resist to all these aggressions, the only way is to have a strong, united, one market in one Europe. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, President Letta, for this very inspiring speech, and I'm sure you have a lot of contributions and questions. I will only make you familiar with the sort of rules that we are having. The members of the national parliaments have been requested to register their interest for the floor, so we have the list already. The members of the European Parliament wishing to request the floor, please fill in the speaking card and give it to the ushers. We will make sure that we have a good balance between national and European members of parliament. Now, the bad part is each intervention should try to be limited to 1 minute. This is probably something new for you. It's the normal speaking time in the European Parliament. I know it's difficult to adhere to that, but in order to have as many as possible that can take the floor, we would encourage you to try to stick to this time. So we have interpretation in 23 languages, and I would then like to start giving the floor to Mr. Chrysis Pantelidis from the Cypriot House of Representatives.
Ευχαριστώ κυρία Πρόεδρε και ευχαριστούμε τον κύριο Λέτα για την...
Thank you very much. Chair, I'd like to thank Mr. Letta for that interesting introduction. Obviously, I only have a minute, so it's impossible to express all of my views. I will therefore confine myself to a number of questions. Mr. Letta, you said quite rightly that there are big differences between the present day and 35 years ago. We've seen the rise of China, of Asia. But also what I would call aggressive policy from the USA. Who is our real competitor, to your mind? Against whom are we constructing this market? Is it the USA? Is it Asia? Do you think that the way we're competing with the US is going to end any time soon?
I've got to say we will collect the interventions and then have Enrico Letta answer them all in a package. Next speaker is Jean-François Husson from the French Senate.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I'd like to say a big thank you to Prime Minister Letta for this vision of a one market Europe. Maybe I could make a comment which is in the wake of what was mentioned yesterday, namely that there is a possibility, or an idea at least, of a proposal for a tax. Now, it's this core tax. Now, it's been said that it will be on companies, but I think really proposing new taxes is not the way forward. And it enables us at least to come back to this idea of a large single market, and it's an interesting concept. It brings together the concepts, I think, that the Commission has put forward. They want this large defence single market in order to be able to strengthen interconnectivity for energy and transport as well. And I also believe, just to round up, that we can hope for the single market for capital in the European Union could move forward. It's one of those capabilities or one of the options that lies ahead for us in terms of this large single market, having a European level sovereignty for capital markets. Thank you. The next speaker is Denis Radke from the European Parliament. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. I'll speak German. Thank you very much for that input. There are 2 points I'd like to pick up on. I think what you're proposing does take us in the right direction, namely a further deepening of the European Union. But do you not think at the heart of it there is a contradiction? We've got on the one hand the European Commission with the new concept for the Multiannual Financial Framework, which I think really flies in the face of what you're saying, and in many places is renationalisation. I'd be very grateful, therefore, to you if you could say some words about that. And then this 28th regime concept, do you not think at the end of all of this, it's just a regulation rather than a directive that would make sense? There is otherwise the risk that we have 27 times the 28th regime, and then how do we make sure within that framework that national peculiarities when it comes to co-decision for labour law can be sorted out for the future? Thank you.
Nächster Redner ist der Kollege Peter van Rompuy.
Peter van Rompuy is the next speaker from the Belgian Senate.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your interesting remarks. I read your report and you mentioned that 60 million Europeans have seen their income, real income, decline over the last 20 years. And so those are mostly people from rural areas with no higher education. And so if we want to come to more European integration, we will need to convince those people that they will also see their standard of living to go up thanks to these changes and not go down. You mentioned the freedom to stay, which is partly an answer to that question, but I would like you to be more specific on how we can convince these people to believe in more European integration. Thank you.
Dankeschön. Nächster Redner ist der Kollege.
Next up, Marko Pavic from Croatia.
Thank you very much. I come from Croatia, and we are now in discussion of the next MFF. We see the competitiveness and social inclusion as the two pillars. Croatia has managed to come from 61% to 78% of every GDP. We fully support your fifth freedom and the freedom to stay. We are aware of cost of fragmentation and cost of non-integration. And we are aware that comparative studies show that when you reach 80% of the GDP of EU, first that the people who go abroad, it stops. And the second thing, that without investments in competitiveness and in R&D, you cannot go further. So we will try to pilot success stories in this MMF to be able to finance it from the next, but that's the takeout we are having, and the pillars we will do are part of national and regional partnership plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker will be difficult for me to pronounce, is Mrs. Radvile Mokunaite Mikuleniene from the Lithuanian Seimas. I hope she knows that she's...
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, you did it very well. But let me start my short speech by saying thank you to Ukraine for defending Europe. EU has helped, but I'm sure it could have done even more. And it's not too late, especially when we talk about frozen assets. We know Russia, the aggressor, very well. We know what it is capable of. We experience it many times. If it hadn't been for the Soviet Union occupation, we wouldn't have had to catch up with the EU. A fully functioning single market is essential for our competitiveness and forms the social well-being. We've been talking about it for decades, actually, and always repeating the words like more jobs and growth. And hopefully this time we will succeed, because otherwise it might be too late. So regulatory simplifications, reforms, deeper integration, we are in favor of all of this. As regards upcoming MFF, our country always followed the spirit of solidarity in EU. We never objected, supported those in need in financial crisis, migration crisis. And I think it is crucial to pay extra attention to the region that is close to frontline. We already spend more on our security, it's like 5% of GDP, and we can't lose the momentum, we can't lose the economic development in these regions that are close to Russia and Belarus and has its own challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Tomasz Grodzki from the Polish Senate.
Madam Chair, Prime Minister, thank you. Single market, it's something that I see as of utmost importance. If we fail to complete it, Europe will become a nice peninsula in some part of the world with nice monuments, but really insignificant economically. I know it's a very serious and ambitious task, and it definitely requires the European Parliament to be fully involved, but also going downwards towards national parliaments and local parliaments. I think it's very important to remember how we started with steel and coal, and let's try to evoke the same spirit and go step by step. Rearm Europe, that's number one. So same tanks, same planes, and same models that we will all have at our disposals. Economic community, it must be a single energy market. So that would be the first. And then we move on through digitalization and other areas. Because if we start too ambitiously, I'm just worried we'll get stuck again at the level of debates that we've had for years now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Remus Lapushan from the Romanian Chamber of Deputies.
Doamna președintă,
Madam Chair, Mr. Letta, congratulations. Some very brief questions for you. How do we do away with the administrative barriers in the single market, because they still exist? The fifth freedom, the freedom of knowledge, how do we implement it? How do we make European capital integration a reality? This is more than necessary for many countries in Europe. We have to encourage producers in order for them to make competitive products. What are the financial plans that we may have in order to implement that? Industrial competitiveness based on the autonomy of raw material sources. Romania and Europe still have these sources that haven't been tapped into yet, and we need a concrete European plan for that. We also have regional differences. How do we increase regional cohesion, and how do we decrease the differences between regions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Kaspars Briškens from the same year, Latvia.
Thank you, Chair, and my congratulations to Prime Minister Letta and your team for this landmark report. And also, I commend the European Commission on what is a quite ambitious MFF proposal. And I would like to emphasize two key points. One is obviously the strengthening of Europe's self-sustainability in defense, at the same time as trying to complete the single market. And there's one important project in our part of the world, in the Baltic states, which covers both of these areas significantly, which is the Rail Baltica project, which not only serves as a critical gateway for military mobility in the future, but also would integrate Baltic states in the European single market. And therefore, I would strongly advocate in the upcoming MFF discussions to have a dedicated funding for Rail Baltica and other flagship initiatives. And the other part, of course, is related to green transition. We should retain the commitment. There should be strict green spending targets also in the next MFF. And I'm looking forward also to the Industrial Accelerator Act coming hopefully already this week. So thank you very much for the work, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you so much. I would now like to give the floor to Mr. Athanasios Kavadas from the Hellenic Parliament.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's very tricky to condense my stance into just 1 minute, but I'll depict what my country thinks. The goal of the Union is to ensure our competitiveness, of course, and that draws on the new competitiveness fund encompassing many billions of euros. The Greek government endorses this, as well as the financing from private initiatives. This is something we pursue at national level. Bolstering competitiveness goes beyond European markets and integration. To do this, we need to slash red tape and have a single energy market. Greece endorses this endeavour. We think investment in this is an important step towards banking union. A single European financial market, a capital market, would help SMEs, particularly in getting hold of funding, and this would significantly bolster European competitiveness. What's more, we must attach due importance to infrastructure, particularly in far-flung regions such as islands and mountainous areas. We can't talk about cohesion and competitiveness if we fail to invest in infrastructure for equal growth for everybody.
Herzlichen Dank. Nächste Rednerin ist die...
Thank you. Now Inge Gressler from the German Parliament.
Möchte gerne Herrn Professor Letta.
I'd like to ask Professor Letta this. You've talked about strengthening the single market. That's an old question. And if I look at the internal market, we haven't really made a lot of progress. Industry is complaining about red tape. So I understand what you're saying, but I have doubts about whether it's going to get any better. And perhaps here with the national parliaments, we have to talk about where the problems really are. The A1 certificates, for example, which cause such big problems. How are we actually going to improve the internal market? I would be very grateful for an answer. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mr. Gianmauro Dell'Olio from the Italian Chamber.
Grazie.
Thanks very much, Chair. As I see it, if we really want a single market without any barriers, if we want to have free exchange and investments, we must sort out the taxation system. If we don't have tax harmonisation in the EU, we've got our backs to the wall. It's not a legal issue. The thing is, there are structural imbalances in place. If we don't resolve this, we will never have a true single market, even if we build up the massive structures to do so. At the end of the day, we will have another superstructure in place, which will just be cumbersome and unwieldy. What we would be doing there is just engendering an extra problem. It would be another thing which we would have to keep tabs on. To unify Europe, we must tackle the problem at its roots, otherwise we will not have a single market. So, Letta, could you please address this issue a little more?
And the next speaker is Mrs. Andrea van Langen-Fiesbeek van de Eerste Kamer Nederlands.
Dank u voor het woord, voorzitter.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Europe talks a lot about strengthening the internal market, and yet when it comes to the MFF, what we have looks very good on paper. But what about the regions? What about the farmers? The cohesion fund seems to be disappearing, merged into national plans. The Draghi and Letta reports show that Europe is hindered by its fragmentation and a national tendency to gold plate. If Europe wants to become one, we really need to reduce this burden. Simple application processes for funds, better coordination, common sense. Our farmers, our industries in the regions need an even playing field on which they can compete. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Mr. Sinuhe Walinemo from the Finnish Parliament.
Madam President, dear colleagues, I'm concerned about Europe's economic performance, especially about the weak digital single markets. For 15 years, Europe has fallen behind in building strong digital platform companies. Today, about 2/3 of the companies are in the US, 1/3 in Asia, and only 3% is in Europe. This cannot continue. The digital economy drives growth, jobs, and global influence. Yet, Europe is largely missing from the biggest global platforms. At the same time, we are adding tighter rules for artificial intelligence than many other regions. How can we close up the gap with these actions? Capital follows the scale. The largest companies are outside the EU, and when they can buy most successful startups before they grow into global leaders. So my question is simple. Are we making Europe the best place to grow a company, or are we making it harder? We need simple rules, better access to funding. Europe has the talent and the knowledge, but without change, we will not have global company leaders of the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Mr. Giulio Maria Terzi di Sant'Agata from the Italian Senate.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Letta, for what you set out there. A business-friendly Europe is a secure Europe, a secure Europe for all its citizens, a Europe with secure frontiers. A single market for a single Europe means that standardization is in place for all the rules and all the dimensions of Europe's economy, but this should not undermine streamlining of rules and simplification. We will be keeping close tabs on this particular facet. Can you give us some more information on this streamlining? What about the Commission's proposal slated for next March on the 28th regime? Something important here in the debate we conducted yesterday in the committee had to do with the concept of business-friendly technology. Business-friendly but also supplier-friendly, manufacturer-friendly. That is essential. Therefore, what I would say here is that we're rather concerned about what China is doing in our markets and what it's doing when it comes to spreading misinformation and controlling our data. Russia is also doing this, of course. How can we boost our cyber defences so that we have more clout in countries we deem to be friendly to us?
Very much. And now I give the floor to Ms. Barbara Kohlm from the Austrian National Council.
Danke vielmals.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Prime Minister. A business-friendly Europe is not a question about bringing in further aid programs. It's about setting the framework. And in that context, the question arises as to whether open markets, competitiveness and trust are going to help our business decisions, which are constantly undermined, whether it be from above with the Green Deal or from below. So where is the troll in all of that? Now, many problems are going to emerge in the context of this new MFF, and how we're going to finally react to the fact that America is escalating, whereas Europe is regulating. If this continues, then competitiveness for Europe is certainly not going to be leveled up. Finally, then, subsidiarity. This has disappeared from sight. Now, as a small country, Austria finds that very important, and our regions that are competing amongst themselves are also concerned about that. So where's that? What's happened to that?
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Ms. Vera Kovarova from the Czech Chamber of Deputies.
Vážená paní místopředsedkyně, vážené kolegyně.
Madam Vice President, colleagues, several brief points. Our industrial base is under pressure, energy costs run high, and as regards innovation, we have to do better. For us in the Czech Republic, and I think this should be the European model, keeping the extent of public services, health, pensions, education, etc., is a priority, and we need to keep extending. But we have to resist the pressure against salaries, and energy transformation needs to be fair. We don't want energy poverty for households, and also the car poverty and work mobility are at a threat. What we need is competitiveness as an engine, social cohesion as a steering wheel. Finally, when you take decisions, bear this in mind. In every election, good measures can be always used against you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Mr. Nikolaos Papas from the Hellenic Parliament. Mr. Nikolaos Papas is not here. Okay. I now give the floor to Mrs. Sandra Detzer from the German Bundestag. Mrs. Detzer?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mrs. Speaker. Professor Letter, thank you so much for your report. It was of immense importance, and I really wish that we can make it reality in our also national policies. I have 2 points to make. First, I want to answer to the Austrian colleague. I think the Green Deal and the combination of competitiveness and climate action is one of the bases that we have in Europe. And when you see that China is gaining more money selling climate technologies than the US with selling gas and oil, it's of highly importance to be in this market for Europe. My question to Professor Letter is, how can we have the best possible combination of private and public invests? And the second is, do we have to change competition law in Europe to achieve more of big companies that can be global players? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Ms. Liliana Tanguy from the French National Assembly.
Merci, Madame la... Thank you, Madam Chair. The next MFF needs to invest massively so that we can reduce our dependence, decarbonise, tackle IA and construct an industrial defence base. Having a competitiveness fund with over 500 billion euros is a move in the right direction, but it's only an instrument. We need European preferences if we are going to make it a lever for competitiveness and sovereignty for our businesses. It's not acceptable for European funds be used to buy American equipment or Chinese components, increasing our dependency. A first stage in the arms area has been taken with safety, but we need to go further. We need a horizontal European preference for future MFFs. That's the only way that we can ensure that we get European champions and that we are able to compete with the Americans and the Chinese. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Ms. Noora Fagerström from the Finnish Parliament.
Arvoisa puheenjohtaja,
Madam Chair, Mr. Letta, the Multiannual Financial Framework is a tool with which we will either reinforce or then weaken the internal market. The internal market is the basis for competitiveness and well-being. We need to take care of the competitiveness of SMEs. In Europe, we have know-how and technology. However, too often, we have 27 different regulations and markets. Therefore, the 28th regime for European companies is a step in the right direction. This can facilitate working across borders, investments, and sharing knowledge. We need to develop the capital markets, innovations, and cross-border investment. We need to avoid fragmentation with national aid programs. Mr. Letta, how can we make Europe the best place to grow companies and not only start them up? Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Mr. Andreas Minich from the Austrian National Council. Mr. Minich is not here, so we move on. I give the floor to Mr. Philipp Rottwilm from the German Bundestag.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to raise a topic again that PM Letta touched upon I think we don't have a funding problem. I think we have an allocation issue, a mismatch between enterprises that need financing on the one hand and existing funding in our member states, mainly in our pension systems, where the money is in low-yield investments in our member states, and we need to activate this capital to be invested in our own markets within the European Union. And I'm hoping that 2026 and the international pressure that we have now will lead to a breakthrough, not only in the savings and investment union, but mainly also in the reforms of our pension systems within our member states. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Ms. Tuva Moflag from the Norwegian Storting.
Colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to participate from the Norwegian National Parliament. The EU agenda with the Letta and Draghi reports has sparked new discussions in Norway as well. We are starting new initiatives to reduce bureaucracy, to increase productivity and competitiveness. This includes both deregulation and tax reform. One issue that I would like to stress in this regard is how we ensure fair distribution of the gains we get from increased competitiveness and productivity. So, when we are looking to the US and being inspired by the productivity growth, we need to be aware of the flip side of the coin, rising inequality and workers not getting their fair share of the values created. It would be interesting to hear Mr. Letta's perspectives on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Ms. Yurida Tobacco from the Albanian Parliament.
Dear colleagues, the President Letta report offers a very unique opportunity, but also a point where it clearly states that Europe does not suffer from a lack of ambition, it suffers from fragmentation. It was rightly argued that to survive in a world of geopolitical giants, the European single market must scale up. For Albania and the Western Balkans, the question should no longer simply be, when do we join? But the question must be, are we economically converging in a way that actually strengthens the single market? The EU funding pre-accession assistance must be strictly tied to tangible regulatory alignment and rule of law. Who receives EU funds should respect EU standards. Readiness for the single market is first and foremost institutional readiness. To foster a resilient economy, we need financial institutions that genuinely support the backbone of our markets, the small and medium enterprises. In this regard, you cannot have a functioning integrated market when domestic legislation continuously creates uncertainty and favors monopolies over free enterprise. Furthermore, if Europe wants to achieve open strategic autonomy, candidate countries must also become firewalls against malign capital, not backdoors for it. When uncertainty and lack of meritocracy discourage innovation, candidate countries suffer from a massive brain drain. We export our brightest youth, skilled labour, rather than goods and services. A business-friendly MFF must therefore invest heavily also in human capital. We must build physical and digital bridges. But we must also do extreme caution. Infrastructure without governments becomes vulnerability. If we want a business-friendly Europe, we must build, first of all, rule of law-friendly economies. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Mr. Tony Yarevsky of the Assembly of the Republic of North Macedonia.
Dear colleagues, as a candidate country, we are implementing a series of reforms across multiple sectors in order to join the EU and be part of the single European market. In the field of energy, I would like to inform you that we are a member of the European Energy Community. In recent years, significant investments have also been made in the area of digitalization. The infrastructural connection between the countries is certainly of great importance for the free movement of goods and the increase of trade exchange. In this regard, I would like to welcome the recent ratification of the railway connection agreement in both the Macedonian and Bulgarian parliaments, which enables the realization of this significant project as part of European Corridor 8. To facilitate easier and faster integration of the Western Balkan countries into the single European market, a joint declaration for a common regional market was signed within the framework of the Berlin process. An additional impetus towards increasing trade exchange is expected to be provided from the introduction of green corridors and green lanes for the free movement of primary goods and products. In conclusion, I would like to express my hope that the current issue facing Macedonian drivers and the drivers from Western Balkan countries will be resolved as soon as possible in order to promote and enhance foreign trade. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Ms. Alexandra Tomic of the Serbian National Assembly.
Dear colleagues, today discussion is promoting the business-friendly Europe and the single market in the backbone of Europe prosperity. To fully preserve in benefit, we need a stable, predictable and comparative business environment with less administrative border, equal conditions for all and better access to financing, especially for small and medium-sized enterprise. For candidate countries such as Serbia, the single market represents both a responsibility and opportunity. Serbia already contributes programs to the modernization of our economy. In last year, Serbia has achieved 58% to the trade exchange with the EU countries. At the same time, regulatory fragmentation and global competition require more coordinated and strategic use of the future EU budget, not only for funding investment, but also tools for the strength the global competition. The reform agenda always allows Serbia to improve the regulatory framework, encourage innovation and private investment, and to prepare for full integration into EU free market with the strategic investment in education, digitalization, and green energy and diversification. We also believe the gradual inclusion in the Western Balkan into selected single market mechanism can contribute to economic dynamism, stability, and new market opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Ms. Rina Sikkut from Estonia.
Thank you, dear colleagues. As Ukraine has defended our freedom in full-scale war for 4 years now, Estonia celebrates its Independence Day today, so 108 years since creating of Republic of Estonia. Thank you, Mr. Letta, for presenting ambitious and a well-grounded plan for Europe. First, I would like to echo my Latvian colleague, saying that the most important investment into connectivity in the Baltic states has been the Rail Baltica. We have the ambition to finish the project as soon as possible. And also, in addition to real physical infrastructure, we would also offer a good example from the stock markets. Baltic stock markets have been integrated. We have a common list, a Baltic list. We have a common trading system, and this is a model that could be widened throughout the EU. And last, the freedom to stay. It's a particularly attractive concept. And I would like to ask Mr. Letta, can you bring out any new approaches or something that would go, I don't know, further than just financial instruments in regional policy that would actually make the people, give the people freedom to stay to Estonia and to rural areas? Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Mr. Carlos Ricardo from Portugal. Mr. Ricardo from Portugal is not here. I give the floor to Mr. Voltek Munzar from the Czech. You're there. Mr. Ricardo.
Obrigado, Sr. Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Dear members, the upcoming MFF is a strategic choice on Europe's place in the world. There must be a strategy in it aligned with the single market. We need to recognise the need for extra investment to the tune of 800 billion euros per annum. So we must also acknowledge that the European budget in and of itself will not be up to the challenge. The MFF must be a dynamo for private investment, but not replace this investment. The new European Competitiveness Fund is sending the right signal. It must be streamlined and accessible to SMEs. Access to savings and investment is essential. Europe cannot continue to be exclusively contingent on bank loans when innovative companies require risk capital and deep-seated capital risk markets. How will the Commission see to it that the competitive fund will be really accessible to SMEs, with the specific mechanisms being simple enough to lead to a real slashing of red tape for the end users?
Thank you. I now give the floor to Mr. Voltek Munzar from the Czech Chamber.
Děkuji za slovo.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The problem is not Europe's diversity, as we've heard often. That has always been our strength. We will not strengthen competitiveness through centralization, but through removing barriers and regulation. And let's admit it, a lot of artificial regulation does not arise from national policies, but from common policies. One of factors cutting our competitiveness are high prices of energy. That makes lives difficult not only for citizens, but also for businesses. We increase those prices artificially. For instance, through the ETS allowances, we drive out energy-intensive industries from Europe, cut our competitiveness thereby, and we want to extend ETS to transport and housing. Artificially raising prices will increase the differences in living standards in between individual countries, and the loss of competitiveness leads to strengthening radical voices in politics. Thank you.
Thank you. And I give the floor now to Ms. Lavinia Menuni from the Italian Senate.
We need to address the strategic dilemma of how to build the right balance between an open posture toward global markets and the need to achieve strategic economic autonomy built around the concept of economic security. The main objective of the next MFF is to revamp European competitiveness, whose cornerstone will be closing the innovation gap, investing in research, boosting technology transfer and manufacturing while reducing dependencies. I would like to ask President Letta what he thinks of how to tackle the demographic challenge. It is necessary to combine export-driven growth with a virtuous cycle of productivity growth, real wage growth and increased domestic demand. And it is urgent to strengthen the industrial base of defense industries and their close integration with civilian industry and technological innovation, including strategies that combine fiscal policies to incentivize domestic production, avoiding distortions within the single market. With regards to own resources, we are open to discussing proposals, provided that they do not place additional burdens on EU households and businesses. The next MFF has to therefore provide a true European industrial policy instrument that finances projects of common European interests and supports strategic investments in a balanced manner across the EU. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the questions from the delegates. And I'm delighted now to give the floor to Mr. Letta for 10 minutes, or maybe even more, so that he can react to questions from members.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for this great debate. I try to give answers. It will be not easy because of the number of questions, but I would like to start with one point that is for me very important. Maybe it was my mistake not to mention it before. All my proposals, all the proposals that are part of the report, all the proposals that are part of the metrics are considered and thought with the present treaties. I insist on this point. I didn't mention any treaty change as proposals, not because I don't think that we need treaty changes. I do think we need treaty changes. But I am very pragmatic. I know that today treaty changes are not feasible in the present political discussion because we need to have urgent decisions. And to have urgent decisions, we can work with the present tools. So I insist on this point also because otherwise all the discussion is complicated. I say that because some of the questions were on topics that need treaty changes. I refer to l'Onorevole Dell'Olio, for instance, about taxes. It is a topic where, as you know, treaties are giving member states the competence, and to change on this point, we need a treaty change. So it is out of the perimeter of the report, also because if we need to give answers in 26, 27, 28, these answers need tools in the present treaties and not treaty changes. I insist on that because it is, for me, fundamental for the discussion. Pantaledes asking about who is the competitor, who is the main competitor. And it is clear that, in my view, the competitors are different depending on the topics. If you ask me, for instance, who is the competitor on the financial issues, I have no doubt the US is the main competitor on financial issues. The fact that today we are so weak on the financial side is because we don't have the scale. And it is, for me, a fundamental point. But on the industrial side, it is, of course, China, the main competitor, and we have to work on that. Monsieur Husson, je trouve ce que vous avez dit.
I think that what you said about this question of capital is key. Everything I've done takes us in the direction of ensuring that savings and investments union would be at the center of achieving this report. I think that's the real problem for the lack of investment in public goods. This is the direction I'm trying to push for. I think that if the European Union remained just as fragmented as it is on that, that would be a bad thing.
Asking about the coherence with all these ideas and the present MFF, and touching one very important point, that is the point related to simplification and the use of directives and regulations. And thank you for this question, because in the report I clearly said that we need to move from directive to regulations. I know that it is a sensitive point, but I'm strongly convinced that is the only way to have the level playing field. It's very contradictory to say that we want to have a business-friendly environment and asking for more directives. I think we know that regulations are the only way for companies to give them the level playing field. Van Rompuy, I strongly advocate for the freedom to stay since the beginning of my work 2 years ago. And I presented to the leaders this point because I strongly believe that is the only way to re-link the European dream to large part of our people that are today scared about the fact that the European Union seems to be too much in love with the cosmopolitan people rather than people living in rural areas. And that was part of the outcome of my journey. I visited all the member states to prepare my report, and I had this point as fundamental. So there are many ideas I presented to the leaders on freedom to stay. You can find it in the report, but I'll be more than happy to continue these conversations on some of these points. Marko Pavic, I strongly believe that the investments in R&D are fundamental not only in the MFF, and that was also, this is also my answer to one of the questions. Barbara Kolm mentioned this point also. The MFF is based on the present situation. What I propose is to change some of the environment where we are through also rules, and the Savings and Investments Union can be the way to boost new investments, and it is, in my view, fundamental, is the only way to be successful. The Lithuanian representative mentioned also the point on simplifications, and once again I insist on the point on the 28 regime and on the move from directives and regulations are one of the fundamental points. We had some interventions on Rearm Europe, on defense, Briskens, Grodzki, Madame Tanguy. I insist on one point on this element. Defense, as you know, is not part of the single market. Never. Because defense is mostly a national competence. And for what I said about the treaties, I respect, of course, the treaties. What I proposed in my report is to create a common market of defense. Common market of defense, working also with the European countries that are not members of the European Union. I thank very much the Norwegian representative for what she said. Madame Moflag, I have to say that my trip to Norway and to Iceland were fundamental so to understand how great is the possibility to work together also on this subject. The point on defense, in my view, is linked, first of all, of the scale of the defense industry. Because if we continue with the fragmentation in our defense system at national level, we will continue Buy American. Buy American is because of the lack of scale. The need to be able to integrate and to scale is fundamental there. Many questions, Laputsan, I strongly believe that the administrative barriers, I answer on that point, are there, they exist, and part of this work needs a comprehensive agreement between national and European Parliament. Sometimes we play the scapegoat once to the others. I think we need, and this is the right environment, and this is the right place to discuss on that. So I thank you for your point. That is for me important. Kavadas, on the role of the private investments, I really agree with your point. It's fundamental. Savings and Investments Union is the fundamental step to boost private investment, because what we lack in Europe is the role of private investments for common goods. Private investments are often sleeping in bank accounts, or are often sleeping in other forms of investments that are not productive. That is one of the main differences with the American market, where private savings are there to boost the economy. So I strongly advocate for a great work on that. Of course, beating red tape, as also Greske said. Red tape is one of the main problems, the 28 regime, and the other points related to the directive and regulations point are there. Van Langer mentioned the point about regions' rurality, and I come back to this point with my reference to freedom to stay, and I make reference to that. I would like to insist on this point. And Valinero, the scale is fundamental. I really agree, is for me the main point. European champions, we can have European champions if we are able to create European markets. It will be impossible to have European champions with 27 markets. And we have still 27 markets. E sono particolarmente d'accordo col Presidente.
I fully embrace what Mr. Terzi said on what they had to say on the real meaning of a tech business-friendly environment. We need to do a lot more on that than we have done thus far. So I deem your point there particularly important. My report refers to various facets of this, and this was one of the points which gave rise to the greatest discussion in the retreat the other week. I think we really need to push forward more on this. Thank you for broaching that.
the energy poverty as a fundamental point, and I strongly believe that is essential. That's here. Thank you very much for your point on how to take together sustainability and competitiveness. I am so convinced that the 2 points are part of the same big mission. And the most important part is how to combine private and public investments on that. The Savings and Investments Union is exactly elaborated to change completely the way in which at European level we work. If we are not able to have both together, by the way, for me, I know it's not the point today, but one of the limits of Next Generation EU, one of the limitations of what we did on that is the fact that we didn't work enough on Next Generation EU on how to combine private and public funding. That was, for me, one big problem of this great initiative that was Next Generation EU, but we didn't work enough on the point that you mentioned. The Finnish representative mentioned very correctly this point about SMEs. And in reality, for me, 28 regime also has to tackle this point, having a specific reference to SMEs, and it is fundamental. And Rottwilm mentioning the pension system, and thank you for that, because it is clear that Savings and Investments Union without pension funds will be more complicated. This is why also in my report you will find a reference to that. I thank very much the candidate countries for their intervention. I visited the candidate countries too. I had meetings with the representative from the candidate countries, the reference that you made, tobacco from Albania, on how to converge, how to tackle monopolies is absolutely fundamental to do so. The single market was exactly there to eliminate monopolies and to help consumers. Jeraski, and your reference to the energy system, that is another fundamental point. Tomic, I retain from your intervention a very good reference to how to create a predictable regulatory environment that is, in my view, fundamental. I end up with a reference to, I thank you, the Baltic countries for the reference, for instance, to the Baltic stock market, the Estonian member of parliament. I think this is what we need to do, to have regional cooperations that are the beginning to get European level of integrations. And on that, there are other interventions that mention this fundamental point. I end up with Riccardo on the Savings and Investments Union, and I link this point to what Senatrice Menunni mentioned on the defense industrial bases, because it is clear that we need both the Savings and Investments Union for some of these issues, but we need really to work on additional resources based on the capacity to keep together the national basis of the industrial system. If we are not able to do so, at the end of the day, it will be very complicated to be successful, and to be successful is the only way for us to tackle all these issues. I end up, Madam President and Madam Vice President, and would like to thank you very much for this opportunity and to tell you how much the role of national parliaments is decisive. I thank you, and I thank all the parliaments that invited me in the last 1 year and a half to discuss these topics at national level. I can tell you that for me it was fundamental to listen in your capitals, your point of references, and the journey that I had in the preparation of the report was for me fundamental. I end up by making a reference to the big European Union architect and great father of all of us, one of my mentors, Jacques Delors. I met him last time before he passed away, exactly 3 months before, when I was tasked to write the report. And he gave me two advices. First advice, the single market without a strong cohesion policy is not successful. And the second advice, do not lock yourself to write the report in a bureau at Berlaymont. You have to visit all the member states, and he told me also, do not limit your visit to the national capitals. In the national capitals, he told me, you will meet a lot of ambassadors, sorry, Ambassador Terzi, for this reference. You met many ambassadors, they will tell you that everything is going well. You have to go in the regions, in the provinces, you have to meet the people, because the single market is the people. And I would like to end up with the reference, this is why the title, much more than a market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those insightful and valuable remarks. Dear colleagues, today's discussion has once again highlighted the fundamental importance of the single market as a backbone of the European Union, as a driving force behind growth, innovation and opportunity across our Union. It remains our greatest collective asset in ensuring prosperity, stability and Europe's global relevance. Safeguarding its integrity and further deepening its potential is therefore not only an economic necessity, but a political responsibility. The exchanges today have demonstrated the vital role of parliamentary dialogue at both European and national levels. The legitimacy and success of the next MFF will depend on the close cooperation among our institutions. At the same time, we must swiftly move from reflection to action. The analysis and recommendations put forward in both Draghi and the Letta report provide valuable strategic guidance, and it is now more pressing than ever to fully implement this expertise into concrete and decisive policies. Allow me once again to thank our keynote speaker, Prime Minister Letta, and all participants for their valuable contributions. I am confident that today's discussion will feed constructively into the negotiations and into our shared efforts to build a stronger, more competitive and more resilient Europe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Christiana. Thank you, President Letta. Thank you to all of you. For the part of the European Parliament, I would only like to say that we will take on our responsibility to actively contribute to ensuring that the next MFF is fit for purpose and responds to the very same challenges we have just discussed with Mr. Letta, and work together with you as national parliaments. And with this, I would like to conclude the first panel of today's program of the European Parliamentary Week. I would now like to invite the members of national parliaments to proceed to the galleries overlooking the plenary chamber. Can I just have a bit of silence, because I want to give you some practical advice? Just 1 minute. Okay, so I would like now to invite the members of the national parliaments to proceed to the galleries overlooking the plenary chamber to follow live the debate on Ukraine on this particularly significant day. Your presence will allow you to witness directly the discussions taking place at the heart of our union at this important moment. You will be escorted and guided by our colleagues to the upper level of the hemicycle to follow this extraordinary plenary session on Ukraine. And I would like to remind you that a walking lunch will be offered at the second floor of this building in the Jan 2Q catering area, starting at 12 o'clock, and that we will resume our work here at 1:15 with the second plenary session. Thank you very much.